Yeah, I'm ready.
And welcome back to another edition of the MLB Inside the Diamond podcast. I'm your host, Tom Johnston. I'm joined by the one and only LaMarr Fields. How you doing, brother? How's your week been?
Pretty good, yours?
Yeah, it's another fine, lovely week in paradise is what I got. So we're gonna start off with some unfortunate news. I know that this already happened, but I want to get your thoughts on this. Tim McCarver, uh, unfortunately, died at the age of 81 a few weeks ago, and he was a broadcaster that was also a player. And, a lot of his work, at least the work that got him noticed, was with the Mets organization. But, Lamar, I want to get your thoughts on this, considering that, McCarver was a baseball player before he transitioned into the booth. Do you actually think that that helps set him apart, per se, from broadcasters that actually don't get drafted into professional baseball? Like, they work their way up through the ranks of calling baseball, like through the minor league systems and stuff. But do you think it actually put McCarver at a bigger advantage, considering he did play baseball?
Yeah, because he comes in already knowing the game. And if you know the game, played the game, you get more insight on what goes on behind closed doors. And you know the ins and outs of the game, having played it. So I think it gave him an advantage.
Absolutely. I do know that he spent 21 years playing before transitioning into broadcasting, so that's pretty in depth in and of itself. And then in 2016, he was inducted into the Sports Broadcasting Hall of Fame, and in 2012, he was awarded the Hall of Fame's Ford C. Frick Award for his work in the booth. And he not only just played for the Cardinals amongst other teams, but like I said, his broadcasting career took him around the booth, not only just in the major leagues, but it also took him to the regional networks. One of them being Fox, where he called an insane amount of World Series along with All Star games, and he was paired with Joe Buck for a good portion of his time at Fox. And I think that that's a testament, not really like saying it's a testament to like who he was paired with, but what I'm getting to is to call a lot of those World Series, to call a lot of those All-Star games, regardless of who may or may not have the broadcasting rights, but just in general to be able to have that opportunity to do that. That probably describes the work that he's done, and it tells people that these networks are noticing what he's doing. But the one thing that I liked about McCarver a lot was the way that he would break down the game of baseball. You get a lot of fans, per se, that say the game's boring, the game is this, the game is that. And I get where some of those fans are coming from. I do. But I think in some ways what set McCarver apart was he was able to break it down to where just because the fan might say it's boring, it keeps you interested. I think that that's one of the challenging parts about being a baseball broadcaster is you're tasked with a game where the ball necessarily is not in play as much as like the puck is moving on the ice in a hockey game, or the basketball is moving in a basketball game, or even better yet, a football game. And your job is to really keep a storyline going and to tell a story to where the fans are going to be engaged, whether what's good or bad going on the field. Like, the fans are going to be engaged to what you're doing. And I spent the past week just re-listen to some of McCarver's best calls and like how he broke down the game. And I gotta tell you, you could tell he studied a lot of the greats in broadcasting because of how he broke it down, just how he went about carrying himself. And a lot of fans would probably be eager enough to say, I watched the baseball game as a fan of baseball, but more importantly, I watched the baseball game because it was McCarver broadcasting.
Yeah,
Now, on to some other news. Clayton Kershaw, as you know, he announced he won't be a part of Team USA. And a lot of speculation now is coming that it is due to him not getting an insurance policy and where he's at in his stage of his career, this is also probably the last time that he would actually get to represent his country. And he did say he's bummed about it, but at the end of the day, I'm not sure whether it's a good thing or it's a bad thing, that he's not playing. Because if you look at it from the Dodgers' perspective, it gives him time to really just focus on the regular season and potentially, you know, try to get through it, because this guy's been limited by back issues the past couple of seasons per se. I know last year he only etched like 22 starts out of the entire season, and that's a 162 plus game span. And I think whenever a lot of people look at what Kershaw has done, it hasn't been what vintage Kershaw has done early in his career. He's been held back by a lot. And what are your thoughts on this? Do you think it's a blessing, or do you actually think like, hey, it's really unfortunate that like Kershaw's not able to participate?
It's a little unfortunate, but it's still probably doing some good in the long run. Give him more time in training camp and get ready for the season. Also, could have been beneficial to him too that if he pitched in it, he already being close to being like not mid-season form, but to being like being a more intense form because playing competitive in the WBC. But it could work either way, I think.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, because you what people got to understand is you only get so many times and chances, throughout a professional career to represent your country in doing something of that magnitude. And this could be his last go around. This could very well be his last season because he only signed a 1 year contract. And maybe it's a 1 year contract to see, how he does. I mean, just depending on the stats, it's this late in the career that he is per se. But it's unfortunate, because you want to go out there and you want to win it with your guys. You want to represent your country well. Your team won the last WBC that was played, and you want everybody that you could possibly have. And I don't think a lot of people understand this. Is there's a lot of hoops you got to go through to get these guys to play, because you guys got to get they got to get permission from the individual teams to actually play for Team USA. And while some guys might want to, some of their teams might just say, nah, we don't want to. And I get it. It's a very competitive environment, because yes, there's a trophy on the line. Yes, you're trying to show that you are the best. So there's going to be a lot, and you don't want a guy to get injured playing in a tournament of that like. But at the same time, it's hey, if your guy's shown that he's very durable and you can do a whole bunch of other things such as be very competitive in spring training, and you already know what your star player could do, I say, just let him go for it. I mean, just know that, hey, we know our limits in this, and, just go by that. But, I get it. It is what it is. Now, on the other hand, Manny Machado signed an extension last week. It is an 11-year deal worth $350 million, and effectively the deal begins this year. Now, whenever you heard this news, did you think that perhaps the Padres were going to get something done before the season started, or did you think that, hey, Machado was going to play this year out on his contract and he was going to opt out, meaning, next year something new was going to kick in?
I thought I was going to play this year through and opt out, but the Padres made a decision they didn't want to get to that, so made a nice offer and got the deal done. That's something they don't have to worry about now. Got him locked up, and yeah, they got him locked up, and they're gonna don't want to let players like that hit the market because the number would go even higher, and the possibility that he would leave.
Yeah, that's true. That brings me to my next question. Do you actually think that if they did not get a deal done before like the start of the regular season, and then Machado played this season out on his current deal because he effectively was saying, I'm opting out, but like where the contract is, this is my 5th year going into the current contract, which the clause allows me to opt out after the 5th year. Do you think some other team would have actually picked him up or offered him even more money? Because you see how these teams are in. The reason I say is because you see the teams that are willing to spend and that have done that. But the question is how much more are they willing to spend, knowing that there's luxury tax involved, knowing that, hey, I might be having a $300 million payroll, but I also have to spend or pay MLB $50 extra million to have this kind of payroll.
Hard to say. If you got the money to spend, you spend it. I mean, ain't no cap, so I mean, you got to win. They got to compete. So, but the players got to produce on the field. They can stay healthy and all play to their potential. They could be a dangerous team.
Yeah, that's true. I do know that Machado's going to be around 41 years old after this deal expires. And I think that this goes to show, it honestly makes you start to wonder, with the contract that Trout got a few years back with his 12-year deal worth over $400 million, the deal that Aaron Judge got, and now the deal that Machado got. You really got to ask yourself, what deal is Ohtani going to be into? Because this is another speculation that I heard throughout various media outlets is this. How long can Ohtani actually keep up being both a pitcher and a hitter? Because at some point, your body's going to be young, but the more beating you put on it now, it's going to probably catch up in, the future. Not that Ohtani's probably worried about that, but I think where they were getting was, how do you expect this production to actually keep going in the future years? Because he's on a different schedule compared to your average other hitter or your average other pitcher that just focuses on one or the other, where he's constantly doing a lot of work, whereas other players that are just a pitcher, they're getting a lot more rest and are not overworking. So where do you actually see this market heading for Ohtani in the future? And do you actually think that maybe Ohtani might become baseball's first $600 million man?
Yeah, I think so. As far as the pitching hitting go, he's not really playing the field when he hitting. So I mean, don't just swinging that bat. So I don't know how that's going to play with him with his pitching mentality. But yeah, I think he's going to be could be the first $600 man, especially if you keep hitting and pitching at a high level.
Yeah, I mean, I see your point. Being a DH, there's really not much physical abuse on your body whenever you're playing in the field and stuff like that. And I guess that probably can help attribute to Otani's performance line, considering he doesn't. I mean, there are very few times where he might go out and actually play in the field, but besides that, he's primarily a DH, so it is what it is. But and that brings me to my last question. I know that we talked about this a little bit about how there are reports that says Manfred says MLB may impose a salary cap, and I know how a lot of people are against this. But here's a true question to ask: doesn't MLB already have a salary cap? And here's where I'm going with this. Whenever a luxury tax comes into play, Major League Baseball essentially has a rule that says if you are an owner and your payroll is already exceeding this threshold, you're essentially going to be paying 30 or 50 extra $1 million to obtain this kind of payroll, no matter the result you put onto the field. So even if per se Major League Baseball doesn't come with a hard cap where, okay, this is the maximum amount you're allowed to spend, don't you think that Major League Baseball already has a quote unquote salary cap in place?
Yeah, the luxury tax thing, I don't think is working like they thought it would work because these teams still willing to pay money and pay the luxury tax. I mean, they get the you winning, you winning games and stuff. Is if you want to win, you got to spend money. That's what basically what it is. I mean, some teams get away with developing players and playing over their heads and competing. But you got the right kind of team. But teams gonna want to spend money. If the owners got the money, they're gonna spend it, and you get money coming in, extra money coming with these TV deals. So these owners are like, screw it, let's just spend the money. If we win the World Series and pay luxury tax, then at least we won the World Series or competing every year for one. But if you win a lot of games, even if you don't win the World Series, you're getting people's butts and seats, getting money that way, and winning games. People are gonna come to the stadium.
That brings, I mean, that's a fair point. That really is, but then it also brings me to another point. Speaking of the owners that actually spend money, I think if you look at, the owners that actually spend and are at the top of the pay scale and they do pay money into the luxury tax, you only see the teams like the Yankees, the Mets, and I believe the Dodgers are the top three up there right now. It seems like that's just the ever repeating cycle. So it really begs to wonder, is this current system really actually working if it's the same three teams that are up top? Because I do know that I believe the first indicators whenever your payroll reaches 180 plus million and you pay X amount or it's over 200 million, but you have to ask yourself is how many teams have actually gone over that? Because if you look if you look at the past 5 years or so, it's really only the same like three teams that have gone up there. And like you can add the Mets to like the past 2 or 3 years, but prior to that, it's really basically been like the Dodgers, the Yankees, and it's hard to say really who else. I mean, those are really the only two teams that come to my mind. And even though they're in the two biggest markets, it's like I always tell people, owners are going to spend. It ultimately, has a lot to do with their local television deals. I do know that per se with like AT&T Sportsnet and some Valley Sports regional sports networks that there are some regional sports networks that are actually getting out of the industry and stuff like that, and that's been floating around too. But it all comes down to you're not going to stop an owner from wanting to spend. If they want to spend, then they want to spend. And if they don't, they don't. But I'm a firm believer that take a look at a team like the Padres. Okay, 5 plus years ago, you didn't even hear of them. And I'm saying 5 plus years just to have a safety net here. You never even heard of them throwing out these 11-year, $350 million contracts and so on and so forth because nobody ever looked at it like that. That nobody even thought that the Padres could do that. But if you look at, the kind of market that San Diego is and where it's at, you also should look at it this way is it's a similar market to like the Pirates. And at one point, back in like 2012, 13 and in that time frame, the thing that gets me is Bob Nutting wants to say this is a small market, but back 10 or so years ago, they actually had a payroll that was almost in excess of $100 million. So how much of a small market actually is it when you have an owner like the Padres does who's willing to go out there and spend? And they've been in the thick of things, and it goes to show, hey, if you're willing to actually invest, good things can happen. I mean, look at the Mariners per se. It's starting to happen. With them, they're starting to be in the thick of things too. And you can argue X, Y, and Z factors, but that's just my point.
Yeah, so 6 teams paid luxury tax last year: Dodgers, Mets, Yankees, Phillies, Padres, and Red Sox.
Okay.
Just looked it up. And that's still not that bad. 6 teams. Yeah, that's not.
I mean, well, if you do the
Yeah,
percent, six times or six divided by say 30. you know, that's adequately less than half. That
Yeah,
might in and around a guesstimate might be 10% or less.
yeah,
I mean, but see, okay, let's put it this way though. Even if you factor that in, the six teams you just named, let's be realistic, they're relatively in some of the biggest cities in America. So I mean, no matter which way you look at it, it just seems like the bigger cities, but they also have a lot more at their disposal because there's a lot of
yeah.
people that like to move there, a lot of advertising revenue, and people are going to want to spend. And I got nothing really against that. It's just the fact of the matter is this. Don't discount a team like the Padres
Yeah.
because
Are you on a podcast?
their ownership has been showing that they're willing to spend at all costs. They're willing to invest into the team. And the thing about that aspect is you might not see an immediate return, but that's not going to say that in the next 2 to 3 years, you're going to see an absolute return on that investment because, if people didn't, and trust me when I say this, even if bigger markets didn't see that, I don't think bigger markets would have been spending because it's just like, why would I spend all this money if I'm not seeing a return in 2 to 3 years down the line or even maybe 5 years? Why would I as an
Hmm.
owner go out and spend that if I'm not going to receive that in return? And I think that it goes to show an example that, you know, you can have an owner that's in a mid-sized market that's willing to do the spending. It's just a matter of do they want to do the spending.
Yep, exactly.
I know that this is a little out of the realm, but college basketball has started dwindling down. I do know that this is the last weekend of the regular season. A lot of conference tournaments begin this week. I'm not sure how much basketball you have been watching. I know that I've been watching the Big Ten a lot lately, and a lot of things have been very crazy in this conference. Penn State went on a road to Northwestern in a quad one win on the road and got out by the slim of their teeth to really keep it there. And Rutgers on the other hand too. They beat Penn State at home last Sunday, and they went on the road and they had lost to a Minnesota team. And to me, I actually think that it's great whenever this time of year with college basketball, you call it March Madness. Even if you're not in the tournament, it's really a lot of March Madness just because, the regular season, you can never say never in the world of sports. And, I just think that overall, it is what it is. But I really do like what's happening. I'm really excited for a lot of these conference tournaments to kick off. I do know this is that, Penn State does not really want to play Wednesday. They would rather much play in the next round of the Big Ten tournament. But it all depends on what they do here and how they finish. But it's just it's fun this time of year. All the surprises that happen. I know last night I was watching the Miami Pitt game and Miami
Hmm.
kind of got that victory at the end, and they are the ACC champs, which is kind of crazy. But what are your thoughts on the basketball season up until this point with how everything has transpired?
I've been in and out of college basketball season. I normally don't pick up watching till around the tournament time, and I'll keep an eye on it. But I like when the conference tournaments and the tournament time come. That's when you see the teams really ramping up their play.
Oh, totally. Totally. I look at it, yeah, I look at it the same way. A lot of times the season is just the process to where you finally get to see what the product is on the field come in March. And I look at that as, even with the NCAAs with wrestling, the wrestlers, they go through the process of the season in the regular dual meets and all that. And then, whenever it comes time for the conference tournament and subsequent national tournament, that's whenever you see the wrestlers, have their best performance. And that goes with basketball too. And, you see Cinderella stories happen all the time. And I think that's what's the best part about any season coming into their playoffs and their postseason is, you know, the best the best parts of their game are actually coming. They didn't come in a regular season. They're coming now, and I think that that's really what sets it up and stuff. As you know, Penn State's one of those bubble teams right now. They have a 50-50 shot of getting in, but some of their games recently and the way that they played, it kind of puts them more towards the NIT than it does the NCAA tournament. But at this time of year, it all counts. It all matters in what you're doing and how you're doing it. And hey, they're playing right now against Maryland. The last time I checked, Maryland was up, but things could have changed since then. One other thing, I'm not sure if you've watched the UFC or not, but a fellow I know one UFC fighter that really made his debut, and it's very rare to make your debut in a UFC on a pay-per-view. But Bo Nickel did win via triangle submission, and I'm not sure if you watched any of it or how much you follow the UFC, but it's pretty interesting to see a guy with a collegiate background in wrestling, actually transition to MMA. I'm not saying that that's uncommon. It's just, most UFC fighters, they do have a multi background involving jiu-jitsu or Greco-Roman or any of the specialties. But to see a freestyle wrestler this young get to actually make his debut on a pay-per-view card is pretty surreal, and I think it goes to show the talent that he has.
Yeah, I'm not really following UFC much, but that's cool. I'm not a UFC guy. I'm
uh,
boxing. I'm old school boxing guy.
I'm not much of a UFC guy either. It's
Mhm.
just it's great. It's great to see local young guys do well in that realm. Bo Nickel,
Yeah.
former Penn Stater, but it's just nice. But I mean, I'm a boxing guy too. I hardly watch those kinds of sports, but I do follow them just because they are good to follow. But do you have anything more to add?
No.
Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the MLB Inside the Diamond podcast. For LaMarr Fields, I'm Tom Johnston. We'll see you guys on the next one.